going to be for your cause. Don't go after Jack Kingston or something like that. It doesn't worth the time, money, and effort and speaking to go there. Find people who are pro-you. Find people that are like-minded. Find moms. You don't think this affects moms? If you go out there and you tell them this is why your child has autism, ADHD, ADD, and all the rest of it, get out there. Get the groups together. Pull collectively. That's what it's going to take to overcome this. Okay? I want to tell you just very shortly, I put my cards over there, my business cards. I also am fairly good, real good, at telling people about their military personnel about their benefits. I'm able to even help them because I understand systems of getting SSDI the first time around. How to up the percentage of disability by using documents that the VA has to recognize by CDC as having an issue, an ailment. And one of the other things I just want to share is a lot of people here don't realize, even our military, forget the VA hospitals until they get them together because they're a mess. Waiting time's 18 months. I had one guy the other day. We got him from 40 to 70% disability. He filed in 1992. Now, if the VA director was sharp, what he would have done was hire all our unemployed vets who've all done admin in their careers to go ahead and expedite the claims. This is nuts. All right? So, I just want to tell you I'm more than happy if you sign your name and your email. I'll give talks about your benefits, how to get through them. I'll pull a seminar together. If you're interested in, I'm really good at helping with resume writing, job search, and career assessments, and helping you get jobs. If you're interested, and that includes spouses too. Anybody who needs my help, I'm here. I'm retired, 35 and a half years. Okay, so please, it's over there near Frank, where you can take my card, sign anything. He's way back there. And again, I want to thank you so much for giving me this time.
Thank you, Janine. Educate. Another thing, agitate. When you go in the grocery store, don't take it. Walk up to the manager and tell him you don't want this anymore. That you are really concerned about what you're putting in your body. And you're not going to take it. Tell everyone that you know that you're not going to take it anymore. Push for it. I mean, what are we? Are we just going to just be passive to this and just let this happen? No. One man who's not passive about this, who's been instrumental in Savannah in so many ways. How many people have heard of a place called Brighter Day? There you go. Brighter Day has been at the forefront in Savannah for 35 years now. Is still in the forefront of what's happening in Savannah. Janie and Peter care about Savannah and what happens in Savannah. They're not out to send profit to some major corporation somewhere outside the state. They are working for Savannah in Savannah. Peter Broadhead.
Thank you. Well, I want to first talk about a couple of good things that have happened. And one, of course, we're so excited about was Vermont, of course, passing the first state to get it through to require GMO labeling. Because it all comes down to we as people deserve to have freedom of information on what we consume. 60 countries in the world have banned GMOs entirely. And we should have the right to look at a package and know. So how many of you are very familiar, I think you probably are, with the non-GMO verified label? Okay, great thing. That labeling has grown dramatically in the last few years, especially even more so in the last year as manufacturers have realized that when people have the choice and they know that the product does not have GMOs, that they buy it. And so there's been a huge incentive. So one of the biggest breakthroughs that really happened this year was that Post Cereals, the first major commercial manufacturing company, actually on their grape nuts put the non-GMO verified label on that. And Jeffrey Smith, who is in charge of the Institute of Responsible Technology, one of the great people who's been working on the GMO issue for years, said that as soon as the big major food people start using that label, we're going to see a much more rapid decline and downfall of GMOs in the United States as consumers reject it. You know, in Europe in 2000, you know, all it took was they required labeling of GMOs. And when they did, consumers chose not to eat it. The food manufacturers immediately backtracked real quick and went non-GMO on their food supply. So this is the direction we have to keep pushing for. Cheerios actually has gone non-GMO too, but they have not done the non-GMO verified label. That is the most important, where they're testing it for parts of on GMOs that are there. So that's been very exciting. Now there's one of the other things is this, there are a couple of big GMO foods that are coming through the system I want to talk about. One that I think is particularly scary, but one of course is this whole issue of Aqua Bounty salmon, which is now in the works to be approved by the Food and Drug Administration. And we have to remember that Michael Taylor, who is the czar for the FDA, was in charge, and he's the man in charge of this, was a Monsanto lawyer. And we have to realize that we have to have, the people have to empower themselves, because these corporations, as we know, have all the lobbyists, all the money, all the power, and it's going to take us as individuals to say no. And in our buying choices, choose non-GMO to bring this whole force. All movements of everywhere have all come up from the grassroots level, and this one also. So Aqua Bounty salmon, at least several big companies have already said they will not carry it. The Safeway grocery chain has said no. Kroger has said no. Target has said no. Other companies have not said that. Publix is one that hasn't. Bilo is not one. Walmart has not said so. So we're starting to see even large companies coming out and saying no. And this is one we have to really say no on. There's over 30 other fish besides salmon that they're looking at making GMO. And what they do is they put an eel gene into this salmon that makes it grow twice as fast. And right now they're growing it in an inland lake in Panama, and just trying to get approval on this. So we've got many battles. The other thing that's really going on is Monsanto's Roundup Ready soy and Roundup Ready corn are beginning to fail. And they're failing in that weeds now have outfigured them. And they are now, Roundup is no longer killing the weeds that they have designed to do on this. And so the scariest new thing is our new monster that's on the horizon is Dow Chemical. And Dow right now is developing a strain of corn that will be resistant to a chemical called 2,4-D. You probably are familiar with it from the Vietnam War. That was one of the main ingredients in Agent Orange. And so they are developing a corn now that you can spray basically this super toxic chemical that makes glyphosate from Monsanto look mild in comparison on the plants. And so now we're just seeing this whole corporate thing. Of course, you have to realize, of course, these companies are always developing the seed to sell to the farmer, and then they sell the herbicide with it, so they get the double sale on it. They are not looking at, benefiting humanity, at, growing food to solve the problem of the world or make drought-resistant plants or other things like that. It's so far all that's ever hit the market is those products where they can make a double sale out of. So this is a very scary thing. So I'm encouraging everyone to get on the bandwagon and write the FDA, find all sources you can about fighting this whole issue of Dow Chemical, because a year from now, this is the rally we might be doing is Dow Chemical instead of Monsanto. So it's a really scary issue that's on the horizon that we're looking at. In the southeast alone, 92% of all the fields now have it's called the Palmer amaranth pigweed that is completely resistant to Roundup. So Mother Nature always has a way of outsmarting mankind's, creation of these these compounds that are there. You know, the increased spraying of that, the health effects that I just want to remind people, there are so many, and one of the things that is in testing for health effects of GMOs is most scientists have followed this sort of, well, we'll look at it for 90 days, and if not, in 90 days we don't see a problem, we think it's okay. Well, as we know, it takes years of looking at the effects of chemicals in the environment and also on things like GMOs to really see what the long-term effects of GMOs are on health. You know, some of the most obvious ones that we've really watched in the last number of years, of course, has been this explosion in allergies and sensitivity to things like wheat and all kinds of other things. And part of what we have to realize is one thing too is when you have a Roundup ready crop, that means, of course, that plant can be sprayed over and over again with high amounts of Roundup. But where do you think that Roundup ends up? It ends up in the seed of the plant. So you end up with much higher amounts of Roundup in the soybean and in the corn that you're eating. So you're ending up with much higher residues of these. And one of the things that's used in corn is called the Bt gene, which is a natural insecticide that the corn plant produces to kill the cornworm that eats it. Now the cornworms are now starting to outsmart that. But the way it kills the cornworm is it destroys the gut of the insect, and the insects, basically their digestive systems blow open. Well, humans eating this, we're finding just such an incredible increase in food sensitivities and allergies. And what do you think's happening in our systems when we're having that? We're having things where we're having our probiotic bacteria inhibited by the GMOs. One of the major detoxification pathways in the liver called the P450, which is the major first line of defense that our livers have in detoxifying is affected by GMOs. And so we've got compounds that are affecting our probiotic bacteria, and we're seeing so many health problems there that are happening now to, scores of people. All of you probably know people that are having now, sensitivities to wheat, having allergies, which we didn't see anything like this 20 years ago before GMOs came on the scene for there. So the compound by Dow is called Enlist, and that's what they are about to bring out. So we have to really be on our toes on that issue. So really what we have to do is we've got the momentum going. We have to empower ourselves. We have to vote with our dollars. We know that this whole GMO thing is highly unsustainable. It takes a huge amount of oil and resources that are contributing to global warming used to do this. The inputs to grow GMOs is a lot more energy intensive. We know we are at this crisis with global warming right now with carbon. This kind of agriculture is just continuing this thing. And we know that the long-term sustainability of this planet is with organic agriculture. We know that, and we know the nutritional content of that food is better. So we have to vote with our dollars and eat organic and buy non-GMO, follow that non-GMO verified, and we've got to do this, and I know we can turn the tide in the United States. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter, and remember Brighter Day. Don't forget it. The next speaker is going to be Frank Messenger. He is from Veterans for Peace. We have quite a collection of groups out here. Of course, we have Rough and the Ruffians. We have the Veterans for Peace. We have, what else? We have the Georgia, the Coastal Organic Growers Association. So visit all the tables anyway. There's a lot you can learn out here. Frank, if you will.
Thank you, sir. I don't speak publicly very much, so I wrote it all down. First of all, I want to thank you all for being here today to help me celebrate my 66th birthday. I can't think of a better way to spend it. Believe it or not, I was a young man once. And in 1968, I was a very young man, not much more than a boy actually. And in April of that year, I was conscripted into the United States Army, along with a whole bunch of other 19-year-olds. I got in the Army, they took me in the Army, made me be in the Army, and I volunteered to become a medical corpsman. And of course, after a brief stay here, as a matter of fact, right here at Hunter Army Airfield, they decided that they needed my services in Vietnam. Now, during training in the Army in those days, we were taught a lot about all of the diabolical ways that the Viet Cong were going to try to kill us. Booby traps, mines, ambushes, rocket and mortar attacks. But what they didn't warn us about was what our own government was going to do to us. The United States was conducting chemical warfare against Vietnam from 1962 to 1971 in the form of herbicidal sprays, aerial spraying of jungles and forests, and also rice crops. The idea, what they told us at least, was that by spraying these herbicides on the jungles and forests, they would eliminate the cover that the Viet Cong were using to hide out and sneak up on us. The actual effect of the spraying of the Agent Orange was to kill a lot of the rice crop and force a lot of the Vietnamese peasants into the cities, into the urban areas where they could be more easily controlled. Now, the most commonly used herbicide in Vietnam was known as Agent Orange. This is a really lethal combination of chemicals, including 2,4-D, 2,4,5-T, and its byproduct, dioxin. The primary contractors for these toxic chemicals were Monsanto Corporation and Dow Chemical. They were also produced by several other chemical companies. And by the time U.S. troops were withdrawn from Vietnam, anomalous incidences of certain diseases began to appear among the veterans. Hodgkin's disease, ischemic heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and a whole roster of cancer, all different types of cancer. Even more alarmingly though, high rates of birth defects were seen in the children of veterans and in Vietnam. These birth defects are continuing to appear in a third generation of children born since the end of the war. There are genetic problems as well as the individual toxic problems with Agent Orange. Now, the chemical companies that produce these agents denied and continue to deny any relationship between the illnesses that have been manifest in the Vietnamese and in veterans and Agent Orange. They say no, the exposure was incidental and it had no effect. Nevertheless, in 1984, the chemical companies settled a class action lawsuit brought by veterans, by Vietnam veterans, for $180 million. Well, you know, as it turns out, that wasn't very much money. That really didn't quite cover the bill. And so now the manufacturers have no product liability. They're absolved from any responsibility for poisoning thousands and thousands and probably millions of people. For a lot of American veterans, it was too late. They had already died. They never received the benefits or the care that they were entitled to as a result of their service. Now, I count myself among the lucky ones. By the time my cancer was diagnosed in 2004, the VA had compiled a list of conditions which are now presumed to have been caused by exposure to Agent Orange. We who have survived are now able to receive the care and compensation to which we are entitled and which were denied to so many who went before us. Meanwhile, Monsanto, Dow, Syngenta, the other agrochem corporations which are producing and distributing chemical herbicides that are remarkably similar to Agent Orange. They're seeking to control our food supply. Think about that. Think about what happened to all those veterans, all of us veterans, and all of the Vietnamese people who have either died of cancer, suffered horrible diseases, or, again, I think more horrifying, manifest birth defects in their children, innocent children, now into the third generation. People, don't let this happen. Do not let this happen. Stop the agricorps. Buy local, buy organic, grow your own, dig up your lawns, plant gardens. Say no to GMOs. Call your members of Congress to demand GMO labeling. You have a right to know what is in the food you're eating. These things are happening all over the world. Not here, but they're happening all over the world. Many countries now will not permit genetically modified organisms to be grown in their countries, and anything that does contain GMOs is labeled as such. These things are happening. Things are happening. People are becoming aware. Let's make this happen here in Savannah. Thank you again for being here today.